What's going on, and welcome to another episode of Chicken Scratch Gospel, coming to you from Midtown Studios in downtown Bakersfield. I am your host, Matt, along with me, my co-host, Tony. Have you done it again?
I don't know.
Okay, well, it feels good that you're here anyway. I'm glad that you're here, and we have a very special guest with us today. Dr., pastor, author, Dwayne Cantrell is with us here today.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
My friend and my brother from another mother, as we say to each other. We're B-fam.
Yes,
That's what we
sir.
do. We're so excited. We're glad that you're here. We finally got you on the podcast. Really excited. Before we dive into topic today, there's something that we do every time we have a first-time guest, and that is our producer, Andy, goes through a few questions. So, Andy, let's go. Light him up.
All right, Pastor Dwayne, we're
Yes, let's go. Let's go. I'm ready for this.
we're really happy you're here.
Glad to be here.
So our first question is, how did you come to Christ?
So I came to know about God in my house, but we didn't have a godly house, if that makes sense. So my church was just kind of a thing that we did every now and then. And it was really every now and then. So my mother would wake up. I don't know why, maybe a hard night of partying. I don't know, but just felt like we needed to go to church one day. Yep. So I'd put on clothes that didn't fit and shoes that were too small and all that, and hated the experience. And it was long. And, I don't know if y'all have ever been to like black church. People think that LVC, I'm the pastor of Living Victory Church. People think that we're a black church. We're not a black church. We're a church that black people attend.
Right?
That's very different.
Because it is different.
It's very different. This was like old school, suit and tie, old, dry.
Babies asleep under the pews.
Absolutely. Pews, exactly. Pews and the hymnal music. I hated it. But, we went and I said my prayers, did whatever. So fast forward, I have a friend that was across the street and he said, hey, man, why don't you go to church with me? I was like, all right, cool. Because I'm thinking we're just going to go and have some fun. It was Vacation Bible School. Never heard of it. We were like building go-karts and doing whatever. And I'm like, church is kind of cool. Young people there and all that. So I would go to church. Turns out his dad was the pastor of this little church, this little Baptist church in Oakland. And so I went, whatever. I think I was baptized. I don't remember. But I was a little kid. But God never really meant a whole lot to me. I mean, I'd pray or whatever, but it never stuck. I never had a Bible, didn't know anything about scripture. In fact, I remember I got to college. I was an undergraduate, and someone said, hey, are you a Christian? And I said, no, I'm Baptist. That's how much I knew. That's how much I knew about theology at that point. So I met this girl named Angel, right? And we were in school. She's older than me, so she had already graduated. We're at San Jose State, and we started dating. And she said, hey, do you go to church? I said, nah, I mean, I used to when I was a kid, whatever. She said, would you go to church with me? I said, yeah, whatever, that's cool. And we went, and it was just the pastor, young guy, could teach the walls down. Mm-hmm. Everything made sense. And it was then my undergraduate years, I was in my 20s, I accepted Christ. Yeah. And that was it. And
awesome.
from then it just fast tracked. I went into ministry, blah, blah, blah. So that was it.
Shout out to Pastor Angel. Where you?
Pastor Angel
Pastor
in the
Angel
house. Oh,
listening.
by the way, Angel is my wife now, so that's that Angel. That was her evangelism.
Also, whoever I'm someday we'll have to have PD back on, and then I'll ask him just some questions about it, because I'm curious to know. For those that don't know, Living Victory Church in Bakersfield, California. You need to get on YouTube. You need to subscribe. You need to watch. Pastor Dwayne is a phenomenal teacher. And the way that he unpacks the word is he does so in there's depth and there's also practicality. And it's very difficult to have depth and practicality, but he does an amazing job. And I'm curious, or man, I'm going to just ask you off camera, I wonder if that's why you teach the way that you teach. Because the first your first like real wow moment encounter was this young guy who could teach, but it was just he made it plain. He could teach it well, but he made it plain.
I think so, and I have a teaching gift. I didn't know that at the time, but I have a teaching gift. But man, the lights came on. So yeah, just to have that clarity, but then also the practicality. Because whenever I was in school and I took and I went to seminary and took these heavy classes, whatever. But whenever I took a philosophy class and I read the book, and I'm like, what does that word mean? And I would look it up and it's like, why didn't you just say that? That's not even that difficult. Why are you trying to sound smart? You know, stop trying to sound smart. So
He's trying to be smart.
yeah, trying to be smart. So what I did is I wanted to make sure I didn't do that to people.
Right.
My writing is a little different than my speaking, but I tried to not do that to people. So I try to be as clear as possible and take deep theological concepts and make them really, really, really simple. That's the hope.
Love it.
That's what I need.
Our second question is, so you're on death row. I don't know what you did.
Okay. All right.
What would you pick?
I have some ideas. God has delivered me. They caught up to me. Okay.
What would you pick?
Oakland first. Well, God first.
I am from Oakland. When you said Tony, I know that was an Oakland reference.
It was.
Yes. Born
Amazing
and raised.
musicians, by the way.
All right. Okay.
What would you pick for your last meal?
My last meal. Now, if you know me today and how I eat today, this will make sense to you. But my last meal would be a huge ribeye steak. It would be baby back ribs, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes. Right. I know none of this goes together, but I'll tell you why in a second. And for dessert, banana split.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because I don't eat any of that stuff right now.
Right.
So going out, I'd go out with a bang.
I love it.
Now I'm hungry.
That's a good meal. Yeah, that's a good meal.
I'm going to mom's right now.
Yeah, I'm like, I will go and eat those things.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel bad that I eat all those things now.
Right. Hey, don't feel bad. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Live your life.
Okay, last question. What is your favorite movie genre?
Favorite movie genre is sci-fi. It depends on the mood I'm in, though, but sci-fi. And my favorite series is the Matrix series.
Oh, so you're
That's
excited because they got a
trilogy.
new one coming out
Yes,
soon.
the new one is coming out. So yeah, that's
Okay.
one of my favorite. But you know, I like those. But then I also like other kind of genres too. So pretty all over the place.
Love it.
Solid.
I'm a rom-com guy.
Me too.
Hitch is my jam. Gotta watch Hitch every time it comes. I actually own that movie.
The way that he looks in the mirror when he's drinking the Benadryl, he's just angry.
Come on.
Yes.
All right, y'all haven't seen Hitch. Okay, well that's okay.
I see it.
Hitch is my that's my jam.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you, Andy, for asking those questions. Thank you, Pastor Dwayne, for answering them. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Now today, I want to get into this topic. There's a lot of things going on, on the planet as per usual. What tends to happen in a broken world is filled with broken people. As a lot of broken stuff happens, and as I was kind of sitting and studying and kind of preparing, not knowing what we were going to talk about for this particular episode, I was reminded of a friend, a missionary friend of mine, who about 10 years ago spoke this word over me, and he said, "You can't be politically correct and prophetically correct at the same time. You need to choose." And I remember going like, huh? What does that mean? And it was because like it was at a time in ministry where like I hadn't started a church yet. I was a college pastor and a worship pastor, and did kind of every the young pastor, whoever's the youngest ranking pastor is the one that just kind of does the odd work, right? Yeah. And so I knew that I wanted to launch a church. I knew that God had called me to pastor. I wanted to plant a church. I wanted to love people well. I wanted to lead people well. But the issue that I wrestled with was that I wanted everybody to like me too. And people don't understand that can be a common wrestling match for a lot of people in ministry. Yeah. And because of that, I think that sometimes we miss the mark in our due diligence, being honest, or, saying what needs to be said because we just want people to like us and we don't want anybody to be upset with us. It's a real dangerous place for any leader to be, especially younger leader. I think 10 years ago I was 29, so I don't know that I could say young, but younger leader than I am today. And I was reminded of this scripture found in Galatians chapter 1. And we all know this letter to the church of at Galatia. The author was never one to mince words, ever. And so he says, "As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be under a curse. I mean, we could full stop there, but that isn't even the full meat of what we're talking about. And I know, and I'm excited to have Pastor Dwayne on here because this is also a dude that like speaks Greek and Hebrew, so he can help us contextualize this as well. So speak again. You have full liberty here, but this is the meat of what I'm talking about here today, and what I would like to discuss. Am I now seeking the approval of men or of God? Or am I striving to please men? If I were still trying to please men, the author writes, I would not be a servant of Christ. In other words, I did not become a Christian. Back then, it wasn't. The only people that called them Christians were people that were throwing derogatory terms at them. That was a derogatory statement. Today, we're like, well, I'm Christian. Well, yeah, those are the same people that say I speak in tongues, but you gossip in English. They're the same. They're the same, ones. But he's saying I would not be a servant of Christ or a follower of the way, a follower of Jesus. I love Paul so much because he never holds anything back when he writes.
Right.
Always straight to the point with everything. The big question is this: who are we living to please? People or God? Mm-hmm. Let's unpack that.
That's a good. I love this. I love your topic around this scripture, because when you talk about prophetically correct, politically or prophetically, and so when you look at a prophet versus a priest, and we know this, but we know a priest is a representative of people to God.
Yes.
So if anybody has a Catholic background, you go to confessional, you confess to the priest, and the priest gives your prayers to God. So the priest is a representative of people to God. The prophet is the representative of God to the people. Mm. And so if I'm a prophet, I'm hearing from God and then speaking to the people what God has to say. In other words, God's representative, right? Now, I know that's basic and that's simple, right?
That's great.
But in this particular text, if Paul is saying, if I'm a servant of God, which means literally that word servant is doulos, or which is where we get the word slave, but it means that I'm owned by, I was bought by God and I'm representing God, then what does that have anything to do with me?
Yes.
Right? So if I'm giving God's word and I'm representing God and I'm coming in the name of God, then why do I care what people think about me if it's about God? And the reason why is because of how we feel, right? And we are
right.
human beings. We do exist in society. But if our role is really embraced, then I'll do like my wife Angel says, then I become like the mailman. I drive up in my Jesus delivery truck.
Right.
Here's your envelope from God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here it is. This is what God told me to give you, and have a nice day. And I walk off. You can get mad and yell at me, but it's like, hey, that's not my.
Yeah, I didn't send the bill.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to put a pause real quick. You guys don't understand. I'm the guy in the middle here, and I'm surrounded by some solid dudes, man.
You are a solid dude.
I'm excited and just taking it all in at the same time. This is amazing, man. Come on. I'm just here for the popcorn.
No, you're a solid dude.
Yeah, man. You have 2 cents. Give them.
Okay.
And quite pleasing to look at. I might add
Oh yeah, spend the 2 cents. You could have anything on this shelf, anything between here and here for 2 cents. You could, whatever you want.
Well, now that I'm embarrassed, it's cool.
that was purpose, Tony.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, this is definitely a great topic, man, and I really had to sit and think about this, especially when you shot it out to me, Matt. It was like, man, okay, this is good, and then I kind of had to look at it as in like, I mean, I looked at it as I can please man where it's still not displeasing to God. And let me break that down.
Come on.
I mean, let's talk about love here.
Yep.
Okay. And with love, I mean, I can love someone, but not displease God at the same time. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where it's at. When you love somebody, you're pleasing them, because I'm not out intentionally trying to hurt anybody.
Right.
But that's what I'm called to do too. You know, to love like Christ did. And I mean, but really, it broke down to 2 different things for me when I started reading this. It was is loving causing me to sin was 1, and then 2 is my focus solely on pleasing man, or is it on pleasing God?
Right.
Right. And I mean, I can break it down a little bit more. Is my main focus to please man or to please God?
Right. Yeah, and that's a great question, and I love because Paul is a phenomenal writer. Now, according to some may say that he probably wasn't that amazing in terms of his gift of communication orally, but as a writer, phenomenal, right? Even the way that he chooses to kind of write this sentence here, I love, and I know that it's not, original, but this is almost, I could see this being the platform. Almost surprised and like, oh, I was not aware. Am I now seeking the approval of men?
Yeah.
Or of God? Like I could so see Paul in this space doing this. And the issue is, I think when it comes to, and we are going to dive into kind of this question of why political correctness exists, and then telling the differences between just trying to please man and then just trying to have everybody like us. Because I think this is the difference that you're talking about. When you talk about I can please men and please God, or without displeasing God, rather, maybe is how we should say that. But there also is a way where mankind and what they think about us or how they feel can then supersede where we place God in our list of priorities. I mean, my wife has been an idol to me before. And now my job is to have charge over her and to cover her and to love her well. But there have been times where I've cared way more about what she thought and about what she was thinking. My kids, oh man, I want my kids to hate me. I hated my dad. I hated my dad when I was a kid, and I did not want my kids to have any of that with me. And I also got really scared when I got called into ministry because I met pastors' kids before I even knew Jesus. And I was like, oh man, they suck. Like they're the worst. Like they pretend so hard, and they're out here doing the same stuff I'm doing. Right. Like, so I think I love that we're going to get to kind of dive into all these things, and we have 45 minutes left to get to have this discussion. The thing is, when we set out to ensure that everybody likes us, and we try to create this kind of perfect world, this utopia, which everybody is out to kind of there's a movement for utopia, as it were, according to mankind right now. And every time humanity tries to create utopia of their own volition, of their own will, we only succeed in creating dysphoria. In other words, when we try to create paradise the way that we think paradise should look, where everyone agrees, and everyone's opinions and emotions and preferences, they're valued as much as the truth, we only end up creating confusion. Like people are just confused. People are like, what? Wait, so that and that? And I have some examples, but I'm going to hold off for a minute because I want to read this scripture so that we can continue. Yeah, no, I read a sort. Okay, I'm just going to say it and then we'll read the scripture. So a news article popped up in my feed the other day. And I'm not even talking like I'm like posting for the church. Like I'm making a post for the church, right? And then I like to kind of go over and I'll look at like some, I follow like Tony Evans and Furtick, and there's a couple other Jakes. Like I follow other guys, so I'll scroll through and kind of watch them because Tony Evans can preach. Mm-hmm. He's a great teacher, and Jakes can preach, and Furtick can preach, and I'm like, oh, these guys are so good. I'm watching them like, man, you guys are so good. And so I love that. And I'm scrolling through, and a sponsored news story came up, and so I had to wait for a minute and go, okay, so somebody paid to push this. First of all, somebody paid to push this. But second of all, I was terrified because what it was a Zoom recording by a student who had recorded a professor in a college that said, I'm really trying to start this movement where people that are attracted to underage people are no longer called pedophiles because there's a negative stigma with the word pedophile. Instead, I want us to all call them minor attracted persons. And I was like,
I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to laugh.
You know what I mean?
You can edit that out.
Don't, because it is laughable to me. And now to that person, they were being dead serious, and they were having this moment where they were teaching, and there was back and forth, and I'm like, huh? This is a part of a lecture? And I'm thinking, now the first thing obviously that pops into my head as a father is, that might be the one thing I would go to jail for. Like I promise I love Jesus. I promise. But my babies are 13 and 11. Tony's almost gonna be 12. I cannot. I don't care. This person cannot come up to me. I'm so sorry. I'm just a minor attracted person. But this is what can happen. I think back to Lot. When the man of God or the representative of God, some say that it might have been an early representation of Christ in that moment that showed up in Sodom and Gomorrah, and shows up in the house, and Lot brings him into the home, right? And then all of the people, the men, the women, the young men, all come to Lot's house, like, and you need to give us that guest that just came into your house, and you need to send him out here because we're all gonna have sex with him. What? That's what happens. If we're not careful, when we get in this place, we find ourselves in this place where everybody's opinion, preference, whatever, is valued as truth. It's just not true.
There's a name that I saw years ago, and instead of promiscuity, it's now called polyamory.
Correct.
It's like I have many loves. That's
right.
all that means.
Because obviously amory brings with it a different connotation.
Correct. It's just a love. Now, if I were to take that to my wife, say, Angel, I'm just a person of polyamory. That's
right.
all.
Right.
Then, you probably wouldn't see me here today. And Angel would be the one on death row requesting her last meal.
Angel, consider what your last meal might be. We'll have you on and we'll ask you. But that's it's so true. And yeah, that is because in a lot of what's interesting is we've been around a lot longer than obviously those that are being raised in this. I was brought up in what was classified as the age of information. I mean, which is nuts when a lot of our youth or our college students hear that I was brought up in the age of information. Because that was before but the internet didn't exist, but then it existed and it was crazy. Computers didn't exist, but then they existed and it was crazy. Video games didn't exist, but then they existed and it was crazy. All of this stuff. And now they're like, that was the age of information. Like, yeah, this is like, you have to be careful because this is an age of information, but I think it's also an age of a lot of disinformation too. So people got to be really careful what they're filtering things through. And with the advent of social media and how popular it's become, there's also people have begun to connect the dots with things like that and depression and suicide. Why? Because we are constantly considering what other people think about us. And if you have been called by God to do a work for Christ, and if you're alive, guess what? You have, but you are so caught up in what other people are going to think about you, that's a problem. That could very well keep you from experiencing everything that God has for you, I think.
Especially if you're a person. Now, I'm a person that struggles with insecurity. Huge.
Yeah, same.
Insecurity. Same. And so that's a battle. And people wouldn't know that if you looked at me or whatever, but I do. I mean, inside I battle, and it is a strong battle. And so I do, and put on top of that, I have a pastor's heart, so I care about people.
Yes.
So you mix that together.
It's
I
hard.
care about people, and I remember we first started our church, and people were coming, and then somebody leave, and they go, "What did I do?
Yes.
What did I say? Is there any way I can get you back?" And it wasn't because I'm concerned about their soul or well-being. It's like, what about me?
Right.
What happened? What can I do better? And I had this whole kind of complex inside. I didn't do that or say that, but that's what's going on in my head. And so having this, God taught me through this that, people will come, people will go, but it's about them, not you. And this whole thing is, it's not about you. It's not about you. But where is it that I need to get fulfilled is through God. And that's where the God thing is. It's not all about what's my name. Now, this society we're in now is all about brand. It's all about what you look like. It's all about your representation and all that. So struggling with that and dealing with this is one thing. But let me flip the script, if you'll allow me.
I would love for you to do this.
Is that I want to kind of piggyback off what Tony was saying a little bit, and is that so part of me reaching people for God, however, is my ability to speak their language.
Yes.
And so let me turn to real quick to 1 Corinthians 9:19 through 23, and it's about becoming all things to all people. So this is Paul.
That's right.
And Paul says, though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jew, I become like the Jew. To the Jews, I become like the Jew. To win the Jews. To those under the law, I become like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I become like one having the law, though I'm not under the law, right? Maybe I should put my glasses on so I stop stuttering. And so it says, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I become like the weak. To win the weak, I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means, I might save some.
Yep.
And so what does this say? So what this says is not that I'm trying to make you like me, but what I can do is I can learn you so that I can find where you are, get to know you, and represent God to you and introduce God to you in your space.
Yes.
That's good.
And so in order to do that, now I work on a university campus, and university campuses are very liberal. I worked on one in LA for a long time, for a decade. I worked on an LA campus, and I'm talking about liberal to the extreme, right?
Right.
And so when you hear certain things like, whoa, it's so liberal that if you bring any thought that's opposing to it, then you're an ist. You know, you're operating in an ism, right?
Right.
You're an ist. So it's like you couldn't even ask questions. It's like, oh, you're one of those. I can tell. So it's very, but here's the thing, is learning how to know the language that's being spoken, the terms of the day.
Yeah.
Learning how to use, and now some you have to be careful with, but just learning how to use terminology and respect people in their space. Now you can have that conversation like Paul had when he says, okay, I notice you have these gods. Now, Paul doesn't believe in these guys. So I notice you have these gods because he studied them.
Right.
Now, remember, Paul spoke multiple languages.
Yep.
Paul was trained in multiple venues.
He was a Roman citizen.
He was a Roman citizen. He spoke Greek. He was taught and educated in the best schools, right? He knew Hebrew. He was a Pharisee. He was all of that, right?
Yep.
So he can flex and go anywhere. So Paul has studied this community and this culture to say, you have a God of this, I noticed, and you have a God of that. He didn't disparage them, do anything with them.
That's right.
But I noticed you also have this altar to an unknown God. Like, yeah, so can we speak to that one real quick? Yeah. Like, yeah. And so now they're listening and they can engage on that point because he's not disparaging or disrespecting. He's doing that. Real quick, I'll tell you the story. I shared this with you, Pastor Matt. This is how culture can evolve, and we can kind of evolve with it. But then, you know, we don't have to be we have to have grace in it so that we can win. The whole point is to win people, right?
Right.
So I told Pastor Matt, I'm old enough. I'm an old guy. I was born in the 60s, right? I know I look amazing, but I was no, I'm kidding. I say that
this man is 54 years old.
I'm 54 years old. I told you I struggle with insecurities, so I'm going to keep saying.
He's better
as long
looking.
As I keep saying it, I might believe it.
He's better looking than all of us. In better shape than all of us.
No, I don't know about all that, but thank you. I'll pay you later. But so I was born. So check this out. I was born on my birth certificate. My nationality. My ethnicity, it says Negro.
Right.
I'll show it to you. It says Negro.
Right.
Right. And my parents, same thing, because that's what we were called back in the 60s, right?
Yep.
Now, if you were to go down to just down the street and somebody says, hey, tell me about who you had on your show today. Oh, I had Dwayne. He's a Negro. If you were to say that today, you'd have a little bit of.
It's a problem.
You might have. So things evolved. We evolved. People evolve, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
In fact, you wouldn't necessarily call someone who's Jewish today a Jew. I have a friend who's a Jew. You wouldn't necessarily say
Right.
that. That might be a little disrespectful today, but you see it in language. So we can evolve, and we can learn, and we can see what's respectful to people. But the whole point is not to be people pleasers,
Right.
but to be respectful and mindful, so we have a space.
Yes.
To be able to reach people.
And when you were telling me that, because I was like, oh my goodness, like, you know, and I remember you were like, you know, is this, you know, we bring this on. I'm like, please say that. Yes, please say that, because you followed it up with a quote. You said something in the quote, and I thought that right there, because I think that we as believers, we as the church, we as a society really could just do all in all better all the way around about this. But you the quote about better.
Oh, and I said, if you know better, you do better. When we learn better, we do better.
when we learn better, there's a difference. So there's a difference between people pleasing for the sake of keeping yourself safe, and because a lot of times when Paul would speak to being, it would seem harsh or whatever, he wasn't doing that. He was just, that was the truth that was given him in that moment. Boom, here's the truth. Yet also is this man who, in other words, if God tells you to say something, to do something, and it's but this is the rub. It better be God. Mm-hmm. It better be God, because if you don't want to get rolled up for nothing. Paul didn't get rolled up for nothing, and he was beat up, drug out of a city for dead. And after he came to himself and got up, he went back into the city because he wasn't done preaching the truth there. Having said that, I think that we as a society, we as the church, Jesus was beautiful at this, because Jesus obviously knew, he didn't know better, he knew best. Mm-hmm. And so he would speak the language of the woman at the well, a Samaritan woman. He would speak to this woman who was caught in the act of adultery. To the leper, he understood that the leper needed more than words, and so he touched the leper. And so understanding that, and I think hearing people, hearing the person matters so much, because we lack in empathy. And if you lack in empathy, I really don't know how effective as a minister you can be, genuinely. And people are already, red flags are already going up when they find out I'm a pastor. I'm sure that's happened to you guys, where they find out you're a creator. Like, as soon as somebody finds out you're a pastor, all of a sudden they stop being themselves. Mm-hmm. And they put something, I'm like, no, like, that's what I want. Give me all of that. Exactly. Give me who you are, because I want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to who you're pretending to be to me, or what you think the church, again, now that's them trying to be, quote unquote, politically correct in that moment, right? So that's kind of what we're speaking to. And the fear of man, Proverbs 29:25 says, the fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. So I want to ask this question, because I think that political correctness exists to an extent out of the heart of, if you know better, do better. But is that why political correctness exists today? Is it more now? Now I'm not talking about the heart of it now. I'm talking about, and by the way, if we were to really dive into the heart of man is evil above all things and desperately wicked. But I digress. 100%. But does political correctness exist today based upon the fear of man, or is it more of, hey, if we know better, do better? Because I feel like there's a different thing to learn about, and not even a different perspective every day. But I mean, just real talk right here at the table, but even a different sin. Like you spoke to, you're not promiscuous, you're polyamorous. Okay, well, hold on. I'm not gonna, no.
Right.
Like you're sleeping around. That's what that is. Right. Like, I'm sorry. I know, because I've done it. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't want to, don't try to, you can't hustle a hustler. Like, that's not going to happen.
Let me make it pretty for you.
Right. But is that why, do we work so hard today to not offend people because we're afraid of how they may react?
Well, I like, even with the word political, right?
Right.
Because if you're looking at political, you're looking at a politician. Politicians have to please people to get elected, right? So you have to use agendas, and whatever the people are saying, it's thus say the people.
Right. They say whatever they need to say at times.
Right. Yeah. And I think many times we get lost in that being, in the world, but not of the world. And sometimes we get too sucked in, and like a movie. You talked about movies earlier. There was a movie called In Too Deep. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that movie. But
LL.
Yes, yes, yeah. And the undercover officer goes in too deep and becomes one of the criminals.
My LL impression.
and he begins to take on so much compassion that he goes against the very people who are trying to enforce the law and all that, right? Yeah. And I think we do that because we forget that we're in this for Christ, that we're on a mission, and we forget our mission because we get caught into the accolades or being liked or whatever. Yeah. And then once you get put on a platform, pedestal, or in the spotlight, as it were, then it to come off of that feels a certain way. Yeah. And so you don't want to be, none of us like to be disliked, right? Unless there's some dysfunction in our lives, but none of us like to be disliked. But when you're in that space, so that whole political thing, that whole, I'm trying to maneuver and navigate, and even in church, we'll say, you know what, we better do the right thing, otherwise we're going to lose people. It's like, wait, am I losing somebody or is this God's church?
Right. And quite the revelation when you're, because there's a lot of people that,
Come on, bring it. You make me do it on Thursday night, so you have to do it too.
I've been in churches where deacons and board members and attendees have approached the pastor and said, I want you to change ... because I give ...
Yep.
And if you don't fix this or change this or do this, my money is leaving.
Yep.
And that can be crippling to an insecure leader who is thinking about the bills. And not just the person anymore, but the bills.
Right.
I got to keep the lights on. I got to keep the doors open because I got to keep the doors open so that people will come because I need to preach the word of God to the people that come.
Right.
Now, it can find its way to people always, but the root of it is an insecurity of, is God my provider or is he not?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to live that way.
I mean, even as a Christian in the workplace, I mean, now I'm trying to please my boss because, you know, I'm talking about finances or I'm trying to get my raise or I'm trying to move up the ladder kind of thing.
Right.
And then I lose myself in the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because some people, if we're being honest, some people are like professionals at taking offense.
Yeah.
They're pros, like they're jumping on it like it's a Black Friday sale. They're like, this is a limited time offer. I got to be offended right just now.
Right.
Like this is, and the issue though, the people will always, people that want to be offended, they're always going to find a way to be offended. Like that's just the way it is, right? The issue I think with our society, the issue with could it even be even in the church? And again, I need to preface this by saying this, and it's not because I think people are going to turn it off and not listen. We don't have that many listeners or subscribers anyway. It's because I need to say this because there are people that are listening. You might be listening and you have a problem with church and you've left the church because you got hurt or you've been offended. Let me tell you something. The bride of Christ is beautiful. The bride of Christ is beautiful. The way in which God designed for the church to operate is beautiful. People are ugly sometimes. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. But I also must say this because it's also infiltrated the church. Our society and some churches within that society are so careful not to offend anyone except God.
Yeah.
They're so careful not to offend anybody that we end up offending God.
That's true.
And that's, the truth about any truth, not even just Christianity, but Jesus said, I am the truth. So we can just leave it there. But the truth about truth is if the truth is real, the truth about Christianity is real and God is real, and if Jesus is real, something's going to offend you or correct you somewhere. And it doesn't feel good. Like you were talking about the feeling of it. It doesn't feel good when that happens. I hate being wrong. I hate it. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I hate it. And more often than not, what will happen is, my wife or kids, they may see me upset because I'm wrong. And this projection of being angry is out here now. And they're like, hey, we didn't mean to do it. No, that's not even you. I'm not even mad at you guys. I'm mad at the truth that what I did created, or what I did was wrong, or the way that I did this was incorrect, or I hurt you. And I'm not even mad. I'm mad at me because I've discovered this truth. And so a lot of times we don't respond even properly to said truth when we want to.
People get offended, man. Even in love, people get offended. It's
what's your angle, man?
I'm saying, like, you have to. We're talking about being completely 100. The kids call it 100. 100.
100.
100.
100. Yeah.
I almost messed that one up.
That's all right.
I got that.
That's all right.
But it's being completely transparent.
Pastor Dwayne with the save there.
I got you. I speak multiple languages.
The kids say 100.
100.
100.
I don't know. My kids tell me that, and that's how it works.
If you never,
I'm like,
Rias is already like the coolest
Baby, it's
child
100.
ever.
Maybe it's 100. Please say it right. But Daddy, you got to be 100. Whatever he says. Pastor Dwayne almost jacked that one up again.
Hey, it's all right.
Almost.
Yeah, no, I jacked that one up again. But yeah, even in love. I mean, because you're asking in love, you have to hold accountability, and you have to do all this, all of this stuff, and it's out of love. And then again, it's going back to heart posture, where your heart at is in the middle, all of that. But there shouldn't be any fear in it,
right?
In doing so, I think in John, it's John 4. I have it here. Hold on. John 4:18 says, "There's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear."
Right.
And now it goes down to saying, like, at the end of the day, guys, is my fear of offending someone greater than my fear of God?
Well, even in that, and that's good, Tony, because even in that, if I really loved you, I mean, I'll say something really, really basic, right? If Pastor Matt were at church and he's about to go on stage and he's got lint on the top of his head, right? That's very present, just sitting there. And he's walking around saying hi to everybody. Nobody says anything to him. And he's about to go on stage in front of everybody with this distraction and nobody says a word. Would I not be his brother if I said, "Hey man, you got a little something right here"?
Yes.
Right.
So that's basic, right?
Right.
So now I just gave him the truth. Now I'll tell you in honesty, I said that to somebody who was older than me one time. And I can't say who it was, but somebody who was older than me one time. And they had a little hair or something on their shoulder. And I said, "Hey man, you got a little something right there." And he looked at me like, "Okay." Like offended, like don't ever do that again. I was like,
"Don't correct me."
Never do that again, because some people just don't like to be corrected. Some people don't like to know they're in that space. And some people, depending on what role you play and all that, is so weird, right?
Right.
But why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't I be honest with you in love?
In love.
But it's not love. See, this is where it's hard for us to understand. We think it's more loving to just leave you alone and let you be than it is to say, "Hey, there's a cliff 10 more steps in front of you. You might want to watch out. I'm not judging you. I'm not telling you what to do or not to do, but at least I'm going to warn you that it's there." Yeah. That's truth.
Right.
Now, you can get mad about it. You can say, "Well, how come you're not telling it? Everybody else jumped off the cliff. How come you can do all that you want to do, but I'm going to tell you the truth because I love you."
Right.
It's not love if you don't do that.
It's a feeling thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, if you're only placating to feelings, then it's lust.
Oh, come on now.
And we don't want that. That's not what we're called to do. We're not called to lust. We're not called to live a life of lust. And when people think lust, again, they think our society is over sexualized.
Andy, do you have a finger snap sound bite?
He has an applause, I think.
I got to get that.
He's going to mess around and press the booze or the crickets. But I need to say this because it's not, we're seeing, we look around and we see a society that is being over sexualized. So everything has a sexual connotation. That's what she said jokes are everywhere, no matter what anybody says. And I've even participated in some of them because listen, jokes are funny. But in doing that, we have, I think, misdefined lust to mean purely to come from purely an eros perspective of this sexual nature or this attracted to physical thing, and lust goes beyond that.
It does.
Lust. You could lust after food.
Yep.
And that's called gluttony. I mean,
we do that for wealth quite a bit.
Wealth, then, and what is that? But greed. I mean, we know these things, and so it's man. Why didn't you tell everybody else that went off the cliff, man? Because I reached you, I got to you, and please, if my fly is down, if I have lint on my head, if there's a bat in the cave, like tell somebody, help me out, because that means if there's a boogie in my nose, if there's a bat in the cave,
that went over my head.
I learned that one some time ago.
I
didn't know what that was.
Right, and you're not being crude. You're helping me, because I remember I went and visited another church, and they were having revival, and it was really, really amazing, and the preaching was so good, and I had no idea. I'd never been there. It was my first time there. I got invited by a friend, and the pastor gets up there finally and dismisses the service. He wasn't the speaker. He gets up, he dismisses the service, and I immediately go up front, and I start, when I hear good music, I'm sold. That's just, and the preaching, if the preaching is solid, I mean, I'm gonna tell you. So I went up immediately, and I'll tell you, I'm 50-50. I'm a 50-50 bar in terms of my ethnicity. I was raised in an incredibly diverse area in the Inland Empire. I mean, we were all of us just, we didn't look at anything but the fact that we were all just kids living on the block. That's just what we were. And so I've been influenced by a lot of different cultures, but I look white. And I'm 50% white and I'm 50% Mexican. And I was raised mostly around the Hispanic culture. And so I lean to that because that's more who I am, because that's how I was brought up. That's how I was raised. I identify with that a lot. Anyway, the church that I was in was a black church. Okay, so what? And everybody was so welcoming until the end when I decided to go and greet the preacher and say hello to the musicians. I went up there, man, and I was like, hey, and man, you guys are so great, man. And completely, and I've been to many different churches before, but completely negated the due process that must be done that I knew because there's a process.
You didn't walk up on the platform, did you?
No.
Okay.
No. But I did not give honor to the pastor first.
Oh.
And so this is not even I'm not even saying this is necessarily a black church thing. I'm saying that if you know the process, you should do the process at least, because you're trying to minister to somebody too. I'm trying to bring a word of encouragement. Their band, the band was a bass player and a keyboard player and a drummer, and it sounded full. It sounded like there was 13 musicians on stage, and I was like, I don't know how you did that, but it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And I went over to the preacher and I was like, dude, and the preacher was a young cat. He was like 24 and could just preach. I was like, man, you're so amazing. And I got this.
The look.
Just disdain, immediate disdain. And I thought, well, I was just trying to come up here and share truth. And immediately in that moment, what that did to me, who was somebody that was just trying to encourage, was that made me have feelings. Mm-hmm. And it put me in my insecure space. And it made me feel like I probably should just leave then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't want anybody to feel that. Now, I'm telling that story because even in moments of encouragement, when we're bringing truth that's like encouraging, if we're not reading the tea leaves, as it were, read the room and understand the process or whatever. And some people, now, you go up to an older person, you say, hey, man, let me help you out. Let me serve you. Let me help you out. And they get offended. That could have happened anywhere. Trust me, I had pastors that I served for many years that you weren't going to tell them that they were doing anything wrong because they were doing it their way.
Right. And
their way was the right way.
Well, one thing you said that I found really interesting. Everything you say is interesting, but I found this piece to be
the first.
is when you talked about the pastor's response in this scenario is your compliment and your confidence to walk up met his insecurity.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's something to consider there.
So this was so funny, and pastors, leaders, especially high level leaders, sometimes are the ones with the highest levels of insecurities. Right.
Right.
So I went to this church. It was a traditional church. And people were called reverend or whatever. Right. And
right.
I hate that term, but whatever. That's a different yeah. podcast.
I had one leader tell me the only thing reverent about me is my calling.
Right.
And so they don't like being called reverend.
No, I don't like it. But because the people were being kind and gracious, I just whatever. So anyway, so we had this special Sunday and all these guest pastors and ministers came to town, and we would all meet in the pastor's office, right? And I used to do this on purpose, right? I mean, I have 2 doctorate degrees, right? And I'm not saying that to brag. I'll tell you why I'm saying that in just
no big deal,
right? So I'm in the room and everybody's introducing themselves. I'm Reverend this, I'm Pastor, right? And I say, who are you? So I'm Dwayne. How are you? Dwayne. Like, who are you? Like, almost like, why are you in this room if you're just Dwayne, right?
Right.
And I would do that and smile. Say, hey, I'm Dwayne. How you doing? Shake their hand. Hey, so good to see you. Yeah, Pastor said I'm Dwayne. And so the ones I didn't know, I'd say, hey, I'm Dwayne. How are you? And they would look like, oh, I'm just forget their name because it's like the title always comes in the name. So I threw them for a loop.
Yeah, you got to read the names and titles.
I threw it for a loop that they couldn't even say couldn't even say their name. It's like, can you say your first name or do
pastor.
You remember what it is? And it was so funny to watch. And then so the pastor of the church, the lead pastor, Said he keeps calling himself Dwayne. This is Dr. Cantrell. Oh, Dr. Cantrell. I hate that.
Right.
I hate that because people can't just treat everybody like they're somebody.
Yes.
Because of their insecurities.
Yes.
Because I have to be higher or better, or my title has to rank. I belong in this room. You know, you have to have that thing.
Yes.
And you can't just be secure enough to just say, "Hey, I'm just Bill." You know.
Right.
And it doesn't. I'm good where I am.
It's like a jousting tournament.
Yep.
It's like everybody, you know, back in the day where you had to, you know, show your patents of nobility.
Right.
And
if this
you
were
know,
a men's group, I'd say it differently, but I hear exactly what
you know
you're
what I'm saying. Yes. So we're, you know, it's Dr., Reverend, Pastor, Bishop, so and so, you know, first of their name, preacher of Bible, singer of songs, you know, unlocker of the church. Protector of the air conditioning, like it's you have to give all of your list of qualifications in and I think this is where we have absolutely missed it, because you miss who God has called you to be. God did not call you to a title.
Absolutely.
He called you to a people.
Absolutely.
And
So I was I lived in San Jose, and and there was this big event, and I was emceeing the event, and the mayor of San Jose was the guest speaker. And so we were backstage, and I said, you know, I have your bio, and I want to introduce you. And he says, man, he was a cool guy. He says, man, when people introduce the president of the United States, what do they say? I said, they say, ladies and gentlemen, the president of the United States. I said, do that. That's all you need to do. And it's like, when you're important, you don't have to say a whole lot. I don't need a whole bio read. Just say the mayor. That's
right.
All. You don't need my name. You don't need any of that stuff. I'm secure.
Yeah.
There's a security in who I am. You don't need to know all the things I've accomplished. And I wish that we could do that as Christians.
Yeah.
As believers.
Yep.
That we can do that. And I know it's difficult. I get caught in the trap every now and then too.
Sure.
But as you talk about being the sensitivity, insecurity we have, and wanting to make sure that we're okay and that people will like us and all that, it's like, can we just be secure in our identity in Christ, and do what we need to do and say what we need to say?
Yeah, and that's so huge, because I think that what we're being sold today by seemingly infinite angles and infinite platforms is the things that divide us.
Yep.
And the things that make us feel. And if you don't feel this way, which is my way, you know, you don't feel like I feel about it, then we have static, or there's an ism or an ist or whatever. And it's because there's no money in unity. If I can just be honest with everybody, division sells. And so that's how the world unfortunately operates. And I don't say that frivolously. I mean that, and it breaks my heart, because until we can identify with one another as children of God, whether that person has accepted Christ or not, they are a child of God. They are created in the image of the Most High. God, the human beings, and I might mess with some people's theology or break some hearts, but human beings are the only creation that God has breathed His Spirit in. You have a soul. I know you have fur babies. They don't have souls. I'm sorry, they don't. And if you have cats and you call a cat fur baby, that's a fur demon. You misinterpreted the word. But
it's a dog guy over here. He's a dog guy.
He's not a mean cat. He's just around, Andy. I'm sorry. He's not a mean cat. He's just existing. He's just existing.
He's a big cat.
He's a big cat for sure. But you know, I say all that to say that we must identify with people, with one another, as children of God first. And if you're a believer, guess what? That person that I saw that wanted to talk about the minor attracted persons or people that are a part of polyamory or whatever, is that something that makes me go, oh no. But if you're feeling like, ugh, I can't believe it, you got to hang them all, they got to die, like, hey, careful, Now, again, if something happened with my child, I might go to jail. But I really am saying all that to say that our perspective of humanity is off as believers. Especially as believers, we should truly understand where we have been and where we were when God found us. And the fact that this person or that person, they don't know even who they are.
Right.
They're trying to figure out who they are based upon the world around them and what they've been told and the things that have been said to please or to whatever. Donnie Mcclurkin is one of my favorite singers of all time, not even just worship pastors, but one of my favorite singers of all time. And he has an amazing testimony where he talks about how, because he was raised by women. He was raised by women, and so he kind of grew up and he had effeminate, mannerisms because he was surrounded by women.
And he was abused as well.
And he was abused, and he was speaking to this, and he said, and so some of these women would step in. My mother, my grandmother, my sisters even would step in and say, hey, a man wouldn't hold his hand like this or do like this or do like that. And so he had this rigid upbringing because he was trying to project himself a man. Now, outside of the church, that it would look like, if you look at him now, he's just confident in who he is. If he is more there, I have met men that are married, that have beautiful families, they are a bit more effeminate than others. Okay, so, but when you live in society that says if you're effeminate, then that means that you're a woman trapped in a man's body, or you're this, or you're that. You're creating, again, there's that trying to create utopia and creating dysphoria issue. And I think that we're not in the business of pleasing people, and we're not also in the business of offending people just for the sake of offending them.
Right.
We are in the business of speaking the truth as God has given to us to be stewards of, and ministering to the person, loving the person well enough to speak the truth in love, full of grace, seasoned with salt. Some of us, our truth has no flavor, and that's why people spit it out.
Right. No, that's a good point. Those are all good points. And as we're talking about people, if we're dealing with the political correctness as you're defining it, and the desire to want to be liked by everybody,
right,
then we miss others because we're so caught up in ourselves. So I miss what someone else might need. I miss what, that we're supposed to love one another. And where the church misses it the greatest is within their own body.
Right.
So the church doesn't even love the church right now. You talked about this division that's taking place in our society right now. You got, all I have to do, and Pastor Matt, you and I talk about this all the time.
We do. All
I have to do is just, look on some social media, and you got this big time pastor blasting that big time pastor. And I was just, so on Thursday nights, we do YouTube Live.
Yes.
And I watch it just to see what the delay is and all that. So I'm watching it and all that. And so I look at it, and so when I swipe and I refresh just to see how many people are engaged. And so when I refresh, I get these videos that'll pop up as recommended videos. And one of them kept popping up on Thursday night, just this past Thursday night. And it had like Furtick, Jakes, Michael Todd, and it just had all their pictures. Yeah. And it says something about modern day heretics.
I was going to say, why they're heretics?
Right, or something like that. I'm like, why would you blast why would believers blast other believers to the world? It's one thing if you having coffee and say, I don't like how this dude does whatever. I mean, that's family. Family does that.
Right.
My family.
Yeah, family does that all the time. Close the door, do what you got to do. But y'all know. But when you go outside,
yeah.
It's like, no, you don't talk about my family. I can talk about, it's like, I just heard you talking about your brother. Well, that's my brother. I can talk about him like that. You can't. And we don't do that with the church. The capital C does not do that with the church. We'll say that person, this person only preaches fluff, and that person doesn't know the word, and this person can't do this, and that person. It's like we're trying to win the world. We've lost our purpose, and I believe that much of that is rooted in insecurity.
Sure.
What is it that you believe you're going to lose by this person preaching the word instead of you?
Right. Yeah, and I think that if you're so motivated in thinking that God has given you a truth about said person, maybe you should go and speak to said person. Well, said person won't take my calls. Well, I mean, try.
Yeah.
And then when God releases you to dust your sandals off, then you can do that.
Right.
But you can do that. You said something to me because I was wrestling with some stuff, and you said something to me that really did help me in the moment. You said, because I was talking about how I felt God was calling me to pray, for individuals that I was having a hard time praying for, because I knew that said individuals were like, they were hurting people, they were, speaking, falsehoods, blah, 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 whatever. And you said, I never found any fruit in speaking against anybody. And so I don't do that. You won't ever hear me do that. And in the moment you weren't being, accusatory towards me, because I was sharing truth in a candid moment, private moment with you. You were just saying, hey man, if you're not careful, that's going to eat you up. And how many people is that eating up, in the church? Because the truth is, I bet you would like to have 10,000 people go to your church. Is Furtick a heretic because 10,000 people attended his church? Is that why he's a heretic?
Right.
Or do you think that you calling him a heretic is going to get those 10,000 people to come to your church next Sunday? Mm-hmm. Doubt it. Mm-hmm. So what are you gaining?
Yeah.
What are you gaining in that? And some would say, well, if Jesus was here, then he would do that. If Jesus were here, he would be on the platform. If there was heresy, he would stand up and he would go, nope, that's enough of that. And forgive me for speaking for Jesus in that moment, but I don't presume to know everything that Jesus would do. But I hate when people do that. Yeah. When people like put a title, or they put a political affiliation or any of those things with Jesus. I'm like, shut up. Jesus was none of those things. They tried to get him to be political. They tried to get him to do X, Y, Z. He was about his Father's business, and that is that.
You know what's interesting about Jesus? This is what Jesus would do, I believe. Is Jesus would be the one that the church was calling the heretic.
Right.
Because Jesus, if you look in scripture,
he already lived it.
The only
they already did that.
he was the first. He was the first Osteen. Yeah. He was the first. He was the first Furtick, right?
The first pop up.
He's the first. He was the first one. Pop up ministry, 5,000 right here, free food. Just bring one basket.
Right.
One basket.
I got you.
Just bring one basket. But no,
for those that are offended at cafe at church.
Exactly. That's
Jesus,
right.
Jesus served fish and loaves.
That's right. And so with Jesus, right, he would come through and he would do the only people that Jesus truly offended. We look at the scriptures with maybe some minimal exceptions. The only people Jesus offended were the religious people.
Right.
Because the other people, they're like, why are you talking to me? At the well, why?
Right. The Samaritan woman was like,
"You're not supposed to be talking to me, are you?
Yeah.
What are you doing this for?" It was the religious people that came against Jesus, because Jesus was for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Not just for this circle right here.
Yeah.
Right. And so churches, the very word denomination represents difference.
Yep.
And represents division.
Yep.
Right? You look in your pocket, you have different denominations of money. That means this one's different than that one. So it's okay to have differences even in churches and denominations. But when you get to a point where it's like, well, no, we only do this. And so if you go over there, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
It's not, we're all a we. We're all a we. We have LVC in the Vine.
That's right.
And it's like I do my best to never say us and them or us and you and you. Right. It's like first service, second service. That's my terminology. First team, second team.
Yep.
And we're both starting groups and all that. But it's we. It's a we thing.
Yeah.
But we do that so much at church that people get turned off by it.
Yeah.
And that's something we do wrong, because we think we're standing up for something, and we're really only standing up for ourselves and trying to build our own. What do you call it? Building an empire opposed to promoting a kingdom. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so the as I've said before, the truth is exclusive, but belonging to the truth is not. And so we need to live our lives accordingly. And not look at all the things that make us different. Don't be so afraid of people and their reactions or responses. Don't placate to anybody. But I say that also saying that you need to know that you are a messenger of God. You are a carrier of the gospel. And 1 Thessalonians 2 says this, verses 4 through 6 says, "For we speak as messengers approved by God to be entrusted with the good news." It's good news. Stop speaking it sour. Stop making it sound terrible. It's good news. That's what the gospel means. Our purpose is to please God, not people. But how do we please God? By loving them well and sharing the truth full of grace, seasoned with salt. He alone examines their motives. He examines the motives of our heart. Never once did we try to win you with flattery, as you well know. And God is our witness that we were not pretending to be your friends just to get your money. As for human praise, we have never sought it from you or anyone else. So I ask you this question to our listeners: who are you living to please? As ministers, as carriers of the gospel, how do we navigate sharing this truth in a world filled with sensitive offense takers? I will say, at times the fact is the truth only offends those who live outside of it. Don't go out trying to offend, but go out speaking the truth in love. And that is where we'll leave this topic today. Man, Pastor Dwayne, thank you so much for your time. Before we end, we like to close out the show. And I'm looking, everybody brought some, we bring little things for those that watch on YouTube. And if you don't, you should. We have little things that kind of represent us. I have a little garbage pail kid in front of the computer. And Tony's got Gizmo. And Pastor Dwayne thought that it would be nice to bring a Golden State Warriors hat because he knows I'm a Laker fan and he's from the Bay.
Yeah.
And so he's throwing a little shade at me, and that's fine because we love him, and it's fine. But before we close out, we like to do some recommendations. And so you know what time it is, Tony.
Oh, drop that beat, Andy. Go ahead.
Recommendations. I got some extra drivers in my headphones today.
That.
My headphones started jumping a little bit.
12's in my ear.
Yeah, I love that.
We got some recommendations, and so I'm going to go ahead and start us off, and we'll end it with Pastor Dwayne, our guest. So I'm going to jump off here with Secrets of the Vine. It's a small book. It's a quick read. I love books centered around John 15. As you know, I pastor a church called The Vine. It all flows from the chapter 15 of the book of John in the Bible, where Jesus is speaking and he says, "I am the true vine and my Father is the vine dresser, and you abide in me and I abide in you." And Bruce Wilkinson wrote this short book called Secrets of the Vine and Breaking Through to Abundance. And it's not like it sounds kind of get rich quick schemish, but that's not what it is. Because the secret of the vine is learning to abide. That's the secret of the vine. You want abundance, you got to abide. Yeah. Those two words sound awfully close to one another on purpose. So Secrets of the Vine by Bruce Wilkinson is my recommendation. Tony, what you got?
So I went through the library this morning and I was like, what do I pick? And I didn't come up with anything. Sorry, guys. But I do have a podcast that I listen to all the time.
Okay.
And I don't know if this guy he don't need any followers. He got some millions of followers already. He's a motivational speaker. The podcast is called Secret to Success, man. The hip hop preacher, Eric Thomas himself. I listen to it all the time. Solid dudes on there. Yeah, go and check it out.
The hip hop preacher.
Yes.
I love it. What's the podcast called again?
Secret to Success.
Secret to Success.
S2S.
Oh, Secrets.
Secrets
to Success.
The Filipino thing came out of me again. Did that happen?
No, I was asking.
My bad.
Awesome. Secrets to Success podcast. Make sure you check that out. Pastor Dwayne, Dr. Dwayne, Reverend Dwayne.
I'm Tony, the dude from Delano.
He did that just because I brought a Warriors hat. It's all right. It's all right.
What's your recommendation that you have for us, sir?
So, I wanted to share this just because it was from my heart, but then Andy made me feel so bad about it. I feel like I want to recommend a podcast now or something. He's like, so you're going to do your own book, are you?
Love it. It's not very often that we have the author of said book on here.
Well, I wrote this book because, one, it was part of my dissertation for one of my doctorates. So I did this as an outline, and then I published it. And it's called Life After Failure, and it's overcoming the hurdles to your success. And that's actually, so even the cover design. So I have to give Ruby Zatino shout out because she shot this. Is actually on CSUB's track.
Let's go, Ruby. And who is that running?
And so this will be me. And so I hired like this young guy that was running. She said, Pastor D, it should probably be you. I'm like, but I'm an old guy. So, but we'll do it anyway. So this is life after failure, overcoming the hurdles to your success, and really what it has to. This is my life. It's my heart, but it really has to do with anyone who's feel like they've failed in life. And with me, I failed academically, even though I have all these degrees and all that, and some of that has to do with insecurity. We'll talk about that on another podcast. But
love to have you back on and talk about that.
Hey, love to be here. But I mean, so I have the degrees, but I mean, I struggled academically. I failed I graduated from high school with a 2.2 GPA and graduated from college with a 2.01 undergrad because a professor gave me 2 A's to help me graduate. I'm serious. But then I got better as I got along. But I mean, I struggled with academic failure, athletic failure in sports. Could have gone a lot farther, but whatever. I've struggled with failure as a husband, as a man, moral failure, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when looking at what do I know how to do well, I know how to fail well, but then how do you get back up? And this is kind of that phase of how do I get back up after I fall? What kind of steps can I take? What are the hurdles in front of me, and how do I get over them, and how do I navigate it so I can be who God called me to be? That's what that's about.
Life After Failure by Dwayne Cantrell. And though a righteous man falls 7 times, he gets back up again. Amen. Pastor Dwayne, my friend, I love you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Man. Love you too.
That is all the time that we have for today's episode of Chicken Scratch Gospel. Make sure you follow us on social media. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications so that you are well aware when we got new stuff dropping. We're out. Go love like Jesus.